In this architecture series video, we're going to be talking about the proper use of workflows within Rock. I know what you're thinking. Workflows are awesome. They're amazing things. I mean, they can solve almost any problem within Rock. And while they are very powerful, we have to understand they are just one tool in our toolbox. And just as the saying goes, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, so is true with workflows. If it becomes too much of your go-to, every problem you find in your ministry is going to be, the solutions to it is going to be a workflow. And so a lot of cases, they really become our safety blankets. They become our quick go-tos, when in reality, they may not always be the best tool for the problem that we have at hand, or maybe the way we use workflows could be adjusted to make them even more powerful. And so knowing that it's just one tool in our toolbox is very helpful in making sure that we use them properly. And so while you could use a nail to take a bolt off of a nut, it's probably not the best option. It'll cause damage, and it's much more efficient just to use the wrench. So how should workflows be used within Rock? Think of workflows as muscle within the body. So if Rock is your body, workflows are the muscle. And so what do muscles do? They're kind of like the verbs. They're things that move data from one state to another. They're things that take action. They also change the state of data. So when things need to be updated, workflows are a very common and helpful tool to make those changes. But muscles are really nothing without bones. Imagine a human body full of muscle, 100% muscle with no bones. It's really just a blob on the ground, isn't it? And really you need muscles and bones to have success. And so bones provide that structure. So workflows don't make good applications. It's common that sometimes the problems that you have are very large and they require almost an application to solve. If you're thinking that workflows are going to be your application toolbox for that problem, you might want to take a step back and reflect if you might not need something bigger or maybe another approach. They also don't work well as a way of persisting or storing data. So when it comes to reporting for your solution, you can do data views that look at attributes in terms of a workflow, and you can write some SQL to look at workflows, but they're really not meant to be a data storage feature set. So again, they're really the muscles that move the data, but they really shouldn't be the place where you're storing data. But they often need features to provide the structure. And so the features within Rock are things like groups or connection requests. All those things are features. All those things make great bones, but they don't make great muscle. And that's where the workflows working together with these features is really an amazing combination. So let's talk about a specific use case. Once upon a time, there was an involuntary onboarding workflow. And this is a workflow that we worked with at Triumph. A client, a church partner, came to us with a solution from a former provider, and it just wasn't working. It never had worked, and they brought to us this workflow that was created. And this workflow was meant to handle the complete volunteer onboarding process. This workflow had 24 activities with over 100 actions. So you can kind of start to get an idea of the problems that we were about to face. And so this was a bad idea for lots of different reasons. Why? Well, first, it was very, very fragile. At this point in the engagement, this workflow had never actually worked properly, but it was very fragile. Like if things weren't in the right order, things would break. It was also very confusing to try to understand what all these actions and activities were meant to do. And actions and activities were flying around, creating other actions and other activities, and it was near impossible to really understand. It was very difficult to support. After understanding what all these things were going to do, thinking off into the future of how is this going to be supportable as things change. Every organization has rapid change, and how to make this workflow bend and twist with all those changes was going to be near impossible. It was also impossible to QA because so to do the quality assurance or the testing of this thing off of all those actions and activities was nearly impossible to do. And if any change were to be made, you'd have to basically redo and restart over all your QA for all those use cases because changes were happening all over the place, and the impact of those changes wasn't very easy to determine because it wasn't really built in a contained manner. And you have to think about in the future too. So think 6 months in the future, not only is it confusing and hard to support and hard to QA, but you may have hundreds of active workflows out there working, and perhaps they're even working well, but they're working well in the context of a certain pattern of actions and activities. Should you change that pattern, those active workflows may not actually work anymore. In many cases, after making those changes, you may actually have to delete those active workflows because they don't work any longer with the structure change that you made. And at the end of the day, why this wasn't a good idea, it didn't even work. It had never worked. It didn't work, period. The original provider, nor we, could get it to work correctly as a solution. Okay, so what's a better way to handle this? So instead of using a workflow to handle the whole volunteer onboarding, using connection requests becomes the bones and provides structures to this process. So in this case, we can have a connection come in, maybe for Ted Decker, and initially the status will be waiting. And as that status changes, workflows can fire to do additional steps and to help automate this process. And so as the states change, different workflows are launching. And these workflows are unique and handle one event and handle one thing. Instead of one workflow trying to handle everything, 24 activities, 100 actions, you have these smaller single-purpose workflows that are much easier to administrate and to support. And again, as the status changes, you just continually have these workflows being launched. And it's not to say that just one workflow type could be launched for each of these. You could have different workflows being launched or multiple workflows being launched for each of those events to be triggered. Workflows launching other workflows is another great way of simplifying the workflows so that they all have a single purpose. And so when you try to put a lot of purposes or a lot of functions inside of one workflow, it makes it harder and harder to maintain that workflow. So when you find yourself doing that, just catch yourself and try to think through, is really that the best way to do it? Or perhaps maybe create separate workflows. There's no right or wrong answer there. There's always going to be a little bit of gray area, but you at least want to do the consideration. Okay, so let's again look at the benefits to this approach. First, it provides a solid foundation. Having the connection request feature be that foundation makes it much easier to QA, to create, and to support these workflows. These workflows are easier to maintain. And again, we're not losing any value here. We still have a ton of value. In fact, I would say that we have even more value. But the workflows are going to be simpler and single purpose. Also, too, connection requests are very easy to report on. So there's lots of tools already in the box with Rock on how to report on connection requests and to provide accountability to these requests. And you're going to get all that benefit without having to recreate it using workflows. And it's also much easier to expand on and add to in the future. You can either do that by modifying the workflows, which again will be much easier to do, but you can also add new workflows. So as we talked about, workflows can call workflows, or you can trigger multiple workflows to be launched. Just think about these workflows as like laser focused. So each one has one focus and one mission. It's not like you have one huge workflow trying to do it all and trying to be it all. So that's the end. I hope this has given you a little bit more to think about as you're making workflows and as you're trying to consider workflows. And I hope really the analogy that's sticking in your head really is the muscle and the bone. And as you go through to solve new problems and provide new solutions to your ministry, I hope you think of that analogy and make sure that you really are finding the right feature to build off of, and let those workflows just be the muscle that moves and changes state of that data.